look, when Donald Trump goes on and on and on about his cognitive fitness, it makes me wonder, like, don't Republicans see this and wonder what is wrong with him? Like, Tucker Carlson throws to that interview that everybody's now talking about, comes back from it, and pretends that what he saw wasn't deeply embarrassing or concerning. But the thing is, it is Fox News. And so not long after Dr. Siegel, he goes this morning on Fox and Friends to talk about that. And I had been wondering, what does this doctor think after facing down Trump, who's rambling about 5 words, persons and mans and cameras and TVs and all of that? Turns out he was impressed.
Well, he discussed the issue of his own clarity of vision. And I did, in a sense, that interview was a cognitive test, Ainsley. I have to tell you, as you know, he is extremely sharp on every second. And he did a test on TV where he basically, went through how great his memory is. And what he said was, even all of the major leaders of the world, Ainsley, he talked about Putin, he talked about Chairman Xi, he said, whatever you think of them, they're extremely sharp. And we need a leader that has that level of awareness and sharpness. And that applies to the election.
So, and again, the funny thing is, Trump brings up the test without it being prompted. Fox and Friends, they hadn't asked Dr. Siegel about the test. He was like, what does he say about the election? And that is what Siegel went to, that he stared into that open flapping jaw saying person, camera, man, TV over and over and over again. And he came away thinking, no, this guy is very sharp as Putin and other world leaders, and this is who we need. Well, and he's a doctor.
In fairness, and I don't need to be terribly fair to this guy who should have led with something different, he did go on to say that the election, that applies to the election, so someone with great cognitive strength would be able to sit down and see what they're framing.
Yes.
But you asked a question like, will this have good effect? I mean, they're speaking in front of an audience that really doesn't need to be convinced. And the people that the president needs to convince to either vote for him again who do not want to, or to give him a shot, those are people that are not going to be impressed by this. Those are people who are going to sort of be, I think, some flabbergasted by the fact that this is what went on TV. So I do see why they're painting this picture, but I don't think it's to great effect.
Yeah. And look, they're always going to defend him. I guess to sort of, so go on.
Yeah, I was going to add that, there in the Carter Reagan, there's a famous Carter Reagan debate in 1980 where Reagan eventually won, but they were talking about how old Ronald Reagan was, and he had this great debate moment, which you can go back and see, where he said, "I will not allow my opponent to exploit his youth and inexperience." So he turned it on Carter, right? I imagine that Biden's going to have some kind of moment in a debate, if whatever debates look like, where there's going to be a line about that, about experience versus cognitive ability. I don't know what it is yet, obviously, but I think that they're going to that the Biden people have to kind of own this and laugh at it too.
Yeah, maybe, and really fast, just because I'm not sure that we've talked specifically about this. There's a couple of ways that I think that Trump has tried to make the 2020 election very similar to 2016. One was corruption, the Ukraine thing and everything, and that doesn't seem to really be taking. And the other is trying to have everyone associate the candidate with these negative characteristics. And he was certainly able to do that with Hillary Clinton. He doesn't seem to be having as much success with Joe Biden. When you poll people about cognitive fitness, they think that Biden is doing better than Donald Trump. Do you think that something will stick, or do you think that there are fundamental differences between Biden and Clinton that make that a harder strategy to have succeed?
It's the perception of Biden and Clinton where the fundamental differences lie. So, Hillary Clinton came in with a lot of Americans disliking her with great ferocity in some circles. So it's hard to get to home plate when you're on first base, right? And Joe Biden is on third base. Whether you love his politics, whether you're a progressive Democrat who thinks he's essentially a Republican, or whether you're a Republican who thinks he's the most liberal person who's come across, Joe Biden is still a liked person in most circles. And I think that that's part of what makes it very difficult for these sort of negative attacks to be put on someone who is actually quite popular. Very quickly, you go back to Kamala Harris in that first debate when she went and attacked Joe Biden effectively at that time about about busing and his positions on busing. Joe Biden was sort of a deer in the headlights. Nobody has really been mean to Joe Biden in a very long time in a very public way. He got used to that during the primaries. I imagine he'll be better at that during the election, during the general election. It's going to be very frustrating for Donald Trump, I think.
Him might be. I'm sort of dreading the debates because, they were a horrific experience the last time around in 2016. And, considering the way the polling is looking, it seems like, I don't think the conventions are going to produce the strong bounce that they normally do, being all virtual and all of that. It seems like other than some big international event, which it's entirely possible Donald Trump will attempt to pull out of thin air, that's like the big thing that could shift things. I don't think that they necessarily typically do significantly, but that's one of the few things remaining in the last 102 days before the election.
Yeah, I suspect you're right. If anything, that could happen. But I also think because of the way that we are going to take them in, because of the way that there's no campaigning, it'll still be different. But I think, yes, they could have a negative effect. They could also have, and people always forget this, they could have a positive effect. Joe Biden could actually, be somebody who is comforting. You always, not you, John Iadarola, but people always think, oh, how could this hurt? How could this hurt? It could also help. And I think that's important to remember.
Yeah.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.